Good evening, panel.
Good evening, sir.
And good evening, Dirty Money. Paul, good evening.
Hello there, Pete.
How you doing, mate?
I suppose you're worrying about being Back to the Future, eh?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh gosh, yes. I look, some hope here. I mean, in the late 1990s and very early 2000s, I had severe back trouble. I had a compressed disc, sort of thing. So don't give up hope, mate. Don't give up. Don't sell your stuff. Hold on for it. If I'd have gone mad and sold all my stuff, sort of thing, where would I be now?
We should point out that by stuff it's telescopic equipment and not marijuana.
Yeah.
Not gear.
And the other medicines are available. Yes.
47 years ago, I would be selling my gear, but I'm not selling my gear now, am I? No, I mean, the thing is, I don't use it a lot anyway, to be fair, as you know.
We are talking the Astro gear now, aren't we?
Yeah,
Back on topic.
Yeah, I don't use the Astro gear that much here anyway, because obviously, you know, my day job involves me using remote telescopes around the world. So I don't use that much here. I've used my cameras, you know, on a tripod and all that rigmarole. But as far as telescopes go, doesn't really float me boat anymore, I have to be honest, when you got telescopes around the world.
Oh, go listen to him, folks. Listen to him. Oh, we're mere mortals now. Oh, dear, something, you know.
Anyway, the violins are out here.
Oh, go on.
We got a panel of Vivaldis going on.
Yes.
Goodness.
No, Ron's not here. Anyway, tonight we meet the astronomer is Mr. Paul Money. And what we're going to do is we're going to chat about your career, let's say, over the past God knows how many years now. I've known you for quite a few of them.
That's nice.
Quite a few of them. But I like the little quip you sent me before the show tonight when you said I'll be in just after 8 like a mint. I said he's started already. But anyway, Paul, let's get down to the nitty gritty. What kind of made you start out in astronomy? What was the spark that started you off, and how long ago was that?
A long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And I'm not talking about the smooth milk chocolate variety either. It's actually a funny question, really, because I was brought up. Let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Yeah.
I was born in Birmingham. So I should have a Brummie accent, sort of thing. But I was only there the first 3 months of my life because Mum was Brummie, but Dad was from Lincolnshire. And he'd had a year since they'd got married. I was born about a year and a bit after they'd got married. And Dad couldn't stand the city life. And so he found out from his brother that there was a semi-detached cottage very close to them, literally just down the lane from them. And they moved up to a little village called Winsby. So I grew up in an incredibly dark sky. I was on the edge of the Lincolnshire Wolds. And was there until my early 30s. After that, I didn't want to leave. I was chained to me mum and dad, sort of thing. But it had incredibly dark skies, so I was already aware as I grew up of, especially the winter time. Of course, the sky it's dark in the evenings. I used to hate it having to go to bed, sort of thing, you know. And I couldn't look at the stars. But I had a nice big bedroom window when we eventually had our own little rooms because there was me and my sister. She didn't have the front room, which was the biggest, but I had the small one at the back, but it faced north. And you know what? I'm convinced now, I have never partook of illegal substances, but I'm convinced as a little child, I must have seen the aurora without understanding what it was, because I can remember the sky coloured at one point looking out. And of course, I'm looking due north. So it does make me wonder whether I actually saw an aurora by accident and didn't realise when I was extremely young. So the first part of it is that I was in an ideal spot, really, to grow up and see the night sky in all its glory. And the second thing, of course, was it started off as black and white, but like a lot of people, you know, Star Trek, Thunderbirds, Fireball X and 5 first for me, you know, sort of Lost in Space. I was just drawn to all the space programs, and they just inspired me. And anybody who's looking at the screen, sort of, because obviously you've got video for the panel as well, they might see I've got my model of Thunderbird 3 that I've recently built at the back. One of my iconic. Oh, Andy's got the Fireball XL5 annual. Wow. Right. It's no longer orange, and it is not Velvet Lemon. It is not. Oh, it is boring. It's Velvet Lemon.
Paul, the best thing about his Fireball XL5 annual is it's autographed by the puppets. all hands autographs.
Don't tell everybody. You could sell that, make a fortune.
Exactly. Oh, you would. It's something like that.
Steve Zodiac, just a scribble, really.
Yeah, well, that was it. You see, sort of flying through space, you know, and it just got me fascinated. And as you do at school, when we say, no, stop showing off, Andy. He's showing loads of books now that he's got, sort of thing, you know. So,
Andy, have you got Space 99 there?
I was going to say, sort of thing, you know. I mean,
I hated Space 1999.
How could you? This is
I've got to say, I'm with Andy. I'm with Andy on that. Never liked Space 99.
It was pure 100%.
Paul now leaves the conversation, sort of. I loved the first series of Space 1999. That was good. The second series of Maya, it became Americanized. Apologies if you've got anybody.
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
As soon as you bring a shape shifter, got to be careful how you say that on the air.
A
shape shifter, it's the answer to all your problems. Oh, we're locked inside the room, size of a mouse under the door.
Yes. Well, they were flying back from a planet. They were running out of oxygen, and Maya turned themselves into an oxygen
cylinder.
Yeah, no, that's it. Plant you, Wally. Not a cylinder wouldn't have been much good. But
it'd last you for a couple of hours.
Mr. Dave Galvin, let's get back to control, because poor Pete there is looking at as much as say they're a mad lot out there.
Well, he starts us off.
So it's science fiction. It was the fact that I was living in a little village with lots and lots of dark skies during the winter, and I say I'm convinced I saw the aurora without realizing what it was. So that all must have steered me. I mean, you've got to be influenced, haven't you, when you're in those conditions? You've got to be influenced by what's outside. And I was always the nerd in the family. My sister was very practical. She'd go up to the local farmyard and jump on the farm. You wouldn't do it now. Jump on the farmer's trailer sort of thing, was chucking out turnips for the sheep sort of thing. You wouldn't see me dead doing manual work like that sort of thing. I'd rather have my head stuck into a book, which is what I used to do, of course. I used to read a tremendous amount. So there we are. So that was I think the way how I got started. But it was always just a passing interest. It wasn't, I didn't know I could do anything about it. I didn't know you could be an astronomer. I didn't know you could have a telescope, you know, until I started seeing adverts for, telescopes. And the one I got from my parents when they finally gave in was such a tiny little affair. It was like a 30mm objective glass, stopped down to about 5. I've still got it. I still got it. Some of the people have heard my 60 to 500 talk. Actually, I've got a picture of it there. So, I think a lot of astronomers are influenced by a lot of the stuff that was on TV, because it was like a golden age for space fiction, so that definitely influenced me. But the actual astronomy really didn't kick in until I got a proper telescope. But I better shut up, otherwise I'll just be talking all night, because you'll not shut me up, sort of thing. So I better let Pete get a word in edgeways.
Well, no, I mean, the reason I asked you is a question, so you'll answer them and talk. Now, carry on. I mean, I'm giving you free rein to talk, which is unusual. People don't usually do that. They usually say, how can we shut money up? But I know how to keep you going. So...
Lorraine's listening downstairs, and she can't stop giggling. Hear you all.
Well, I mean,
Julian join us now, sort of thing. Hello, Julian and Kappa. I did see you earlier. Sort of thing.
Julian's just popped in
Hi,
there
Paul.
now. Hi, Julian.
Hello, Julian.
How are you doing?
No seed. I took my twin brother, folks. Can't you tell?
It's all in the hair.
Yes, it is. Yes. I am getting lighter. This is serious. Well, I've passed 60 now. I passed 60.
60 plus, my goodness.
No, 60.
You're looking well, mate. You're looking well.
I tell you what, the best news about all this is that I suppose, in a way, getting back to what Pete asked originally, was that, I owe a lot to Marks and Spencer's. Other retailers are available. But the thing is, I do owe a lot to Marks and Spencer's because by accident, a friend of mine did a summer job at the Boston store in Lincolnshire, South Lincolnshire. And when it came to the end of the summer, he was going off to university. So he put me forward as a possible candidate to replace him, because they wanted somebody as a Saturday boy. And I didn't have a job at the time. So I applied, didn't think I'd get it. But I actually did, and then eventually that turned into my full-time job, because, I was applying for all sorts of jobs. I applied to Plessy, Cable and Wireless, because at that stage I thought that might be the only way I'll get into something to do with space. So, but I didn't, needless to say, I didn't get any of the jobs. And to be quite frank, the vast majority of the companies, except Cable and Wires, never replied. You know, they never replied. But at least Cable and Wires did, but they just said, sorry, there's just too many applicants and they've all got degrees. And I had no degrees or anything like that. So, you know, so when M&S offered me the full-time job, you know, I jumped at it. And the beauty about that was that I was wandering around Boston one day in my dinner round. I saw a poster for the local Astronomical Society, Boston Astronomical Association, which I always thought was quite funny because it's got the same initials as the British Astronomical Association, sort of thing. So they could definitely be confused. And also they could be confused with something to do with sheep, but we won't go there. So, you know, I joined, I was very shy. I paused for dramatic effect there because I can see the faces of quite a few people on the Zoom channels in shock.
What the hell happened?
well, tell you what,
astronomy.
Andy, I'll tell you what happened. It's working in a Marks and Spencer store when the vast majority of the actual employees are 80% women, and there's only 5 of you blokes. You are totally outnumbered, and you know, you grow up fast. The conversations, we won't go into the conversations I heard on the dinner table next door. In those days, it was male on one table and the rest of the tables were women. And I tell you, some of the conversations I accidentally heard was enough to curdle my blood. And I mean, I grew up so quick and discovered things without realizing it, sort of thing, you know. But we won't let's not go there. We're talking about astronomy, sort of thing, you know.
Well, not necessarily. Do carry on.
Well, oh dear. But the thing was, though, that gave me I was very shy, and they knew in the early days at Marks Spencer's that I wouldn't really say a lot to. That's why I was in the warehouse. I could be squirreled away, sort of thing, and I didn't have to meet people. But as it happened, I joined the local society, and you know, and I was just a member, but I had to take a friend along so I could go because I wouldn't go on my own. So we went along. My friend stayed for about 3 months and then dropped out. And I ended up joining and ended up on the blooming committee within 6 months. Golden rule, don't join a society. You'll end up on the committee.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They pounce on fresh blood.
It's like Hotel California. You join and you never leave.
You never leave, yeah. So that's a favourite song of mine, I have to say.
Yeah, same here, yeah.
Definitely. So, you know, I joined the society and the thing was, and this is why I like to promote astronomical societies, because, you know, it brought me out of my shell. I met like-minded people. Up until then, I was on my own. I got my first telescope prior to all this, about a year and a half before I actually joined Marks and Spencer's, because a friend asked me down to his place. We were good friends of Barry and Barry Isles. And I went down to his place and he had this 60mm refractor up in his bedroom. So now, and in them days, I never thought about a bloke asking me up to his bedroom, you know, no thoughts of worries or anything like that sort of thing, because it was all quite innocent. He was a nerd like me, and he let me look through his 60mm, his telescope. I mean, you get the idea. So, you know, but we looked at Jupiter and Saturn, and I was blown away. And at that time, he turned around and said, I'll sell it to you, because I've actually lost interest. I'm not really that bothered about it.
You were blown away.
I was blown away, yeah.
Man the language, everyone. Come on. Let's keep on the science subject.
Yes, Andy.
Mr. Andy, you're a very naughty boy.
He is, especially with that big
I'm the Messiah.
behind him on the picture.
Yeah.
So the thing was, though, he asked some sort of price that I can't remember now. In them days, I only had pocket money. I didn't have a job or anything, because this is before I remember the M&S days. So I was disappointed, went home. About a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later, he invited me down again. It looked like it was going to be another clear sky. So I was out, we were looking at the telescope. And he said, I tell you what, let me have it. I'll let you have it for a £5. Well, I had a £5 on me. Well, that was it, you know, £5 straight to him sort of thing, you know. Then he boxed it up sort of thing. And then I had to realise I had to get it back home around, I think it's about 8 or 9 miles sort of thing, up into the wolds. There's a 1 in 3 hill at Old Bolingbroke sort of thing. So I had to go up on my motorbike, moped, a Yamaha FS1E sort of thing, with this massive great box straddled across the petrol tank. I'm glad it was late at night, because really I should have been arrested, because I was so unstable. It's just daft. But I got it home, and that was the beginning. So, and I could find Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars. Jupiter and Saturn were amazing. I had that shock, you know, when you sort of get your first telescope and your magnifies 400 times. And you actually
Yeah.
think that it's going to go from the sort of little tiny thing to this massive great view in the telescope. And it magnified 400 times. And I looked and I thought, well, I could just about see some belts on Jupiter, but this is nothing like the size I was expecting. So
wasn't it in full colour? Like the picture on the box.
Yeah, well, it was in colour. I could see something, but yeah. So, but I could see Saturn's rings, and that really did. That was wow. That was one of my wow moments. So, but once I'd viewed Jupiter and Saturn, of course, the old moon, so not Miranda behind Daz on his Zoom picture sort of thing. So, yeah, I can name that moon in one sort of thing, But the thing is, it was a case of the moon was. I wasn't that excited about Apollo. I know, shock, horror. But I remember seeing it as a kid, sort of being dragged downstairs to look at the black and white TV and watching them fumbling about, getting down the ladder and whatnot, and doing that. Fair enough. But it didn't mean a lot to me because I could walk outside, open my curtain, and I could see, there's the moon. It's right there. What's the matter with you? It's right on a doorstep.
So did you not look at the moon at the time when they landed on the moon and look up and go, there's people from Earth walking on there?
That exciting.
I can't believe that, Paul. You shocked me.
I know. Well, this is it sort of thing, and there endeth my career. But the point was, it was later as I got older and began to really appreciate space flight, the difficulties of space, and what people were doing. Then I was fascinated. Of course, by then I had Airfix kits given to me for Christmas of the lunar module sort of thing, and the Apollo Saturn V. And of course, now I'm revisiting it. You can't see the boxes at the top there, but in the conservatory, Paul Lorraine's having to put up with. It's become my model centre at the moment. I think she realises sort of thing. Now I've hit me a certain age sort of thing. I've gone back to my modelling career. When I say my modelling career, I'm talking about Airfix Revel, that sort of thing.
So it's not true that you were a model in Marks and Spencer's?
There is a story there, but we'll come to that.
No, that was a joke. That was a joke.
But there is actually a story there, so that will amuse you. So somebody remember that. Mary and Rachel, probably try to remember that. I think it's Rachel, Bathtub Astronomers. Is that Rachel? Yeah? Nod your head, yeah. Yes, there, I got you right.
Rachel's there.
So the thing about it is that, I wasn't that fascinated until later about Apollo, but which is why Voyager and Viking really caught my attention because they really were going where literally no one had gone before. And that harked back to, of course, Star Trek, didn't it? Sort of thing. So, so I gradually found that I bought slides from an American company after I started subscribing to Sky and Telescope, and the slides came back for the Voyager 2 encounter at Saturn. And I showed our club the actual slides, but I only showed them at one of our, typical failed Star Watch, the usual ones, promising to be clear, and then it clouds over. So you sat around in somebody's room sort of thing, and, see you later, Gary. But it's a case of, it was cloudy. So what do we do? Well, we sat and just generally chatting about the club and the meeting. And then I just happened to reach into my plastic carrier bag and said, I've got the slide set came this morning, actually. But I just showed them it. The aim was just show them the slides. Look, I've got 20 slides. And they said, we've got a projector and a screen. I went, uh-oh. They loaded them up for me. And because I'd read so much, because I was, and I'm not as much now, really ought to be more of an avid reader. That I read so much about the mission. When I started showing the slides, I looked at the little tiny bit of notes that they'd given, and I thought, I know more than that from the magazines. So I just dropped the notes to one side, started showing the slides, and then talked for God knows how long. After the secretary, John, who's sadly no longer with us, he turned around and said, that was good. Do you want to do that for the club? Oh, no, I'm shy. I can't speak in front of the club. You have speakers, you get important people in. I can't. He said, go on, you're a natural. I want you to speak. And he spent the rest of the evening, talk about bullying, but he was the one that really pushed me to it, because I said, well, only 20 slides won't make a talk, but I have got the other slide set with 40 slides coming from the Voyager 1 encounter. So I said, with that, that'll make a longer talk. So I then spent that September, because this must be around about, I think, May or June. And that September, I did the club meeting, and it had something like 60 people, which was the highest attendance we'd ever had at that particular time. And, so we were a bit gobsmacked. I mean, imagine me, my first inaugural talk, and there's a room absolutely packed full, So, and I talked for something like an hour and a half at least. Oh, there's a surprise, isn't it?
Just a quiet meeting then, was it? Just a short one?
That was one of my short talks, So, but I do like to give, value for money. Hence, oh dear, well, I've got
Certainly
to do that one.
And volume.
But, and volume. But I really enjoyed it. And but I thought it was a one-off. But what I didn't know was that a few nights later, John talked to Barry Watts at Cleethorpes and District Astronomical Society and said, we've got a new kid on the block. And so we got a phone call, or rather, in the days when you only had a landline and it was into the landing, sort of thing, sort of hallway. So the phone went, I'm in the living room. Dad comes through to me looking completely puzzled. I said, there's a guy on the phone just asked me if I do talks about Mars.
Your dad.
And I said, I had to tell him, no, I fix cars, because he was a car mechanic. So he said,
Mars.
So Mars. So I went through, and it's Barry Watts, and he took a few minutes to convince me, mainly because he kept talking about, giving the talk, and we heard it's good, and we'd like you to come. And I said, well, it's Saturn I talk about, the Voyager. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, we'll have that as well. Okay, you booked for that. I said, well, I don't really do talks. Well, we pay expenses. As soon as that word pay came up, I thought, hang on, I better not say no. So I said, well, all right. I mean, in them days, I can't remember, I think it was a £5. It was just petrol money in them days. I mean, you've got to remember, this is sort of like the very early, it's 1982 in actual fact, when I did me second talk. So, so petrol was cheap then, sort of thing, and by then I'd actually got what they would call a bond bug. Can some of you remember a bond bug?
Oh, yes.
the orange cheese wedge.
That's it,
thing,
the wedge.
Absolutely brilliant sort of thing. I really wish I'd never got rid of that. Would have been worth a blooming fortune now, I tell you. But, so I'd travel around. My early talks are all travelling around in that, giving talks around Lincolnshire.
Paul, I remember your talks when we were at Bake Up. Obviously, we go back to the 1980s. Yeah. That's when we first met up on the Yorkshire-Lancashire border up there. Do you remember the maggot farm?
Oh, God.
Just down the road. At a certain time of the year, you get the wind blowing up the hill, and you get the smell of maggots. Absolutely lovely. Wow, my
lovely
goodness.
With fish and chips from the local.
It was awful, wasn't it? But what a great time we had there. Well, that's where, that's where I saw you first doing your talks, and it was objects of the southern constellations, Scorpius and Sagittarius, galaxy season, the objects to look for in Virgo. And they were great times.
I also remember that you lot were actually the ones that told me off.
What did we tell you? Liverpool, what did we tell you off for?
I did a talk. It was actually all about Scorpio.
Oh, you used the word
Scorpio.
You used the astrological term for the constellation.
And boy, did you not tell me off. You weren't nasty.
No.
We had such a laugh about that. And I said, blooming it, of all the mistakes to make.
But you've never done it since?
No. I learned my mistake. Look, when Liverpool Astronomical Society tell you off, yeah, that's it, sort of thing, you
got your money's back on us, or money's worth on us. So
exactly.
No, but they were great times, and great camaraderie, and all the friendships, and they're still going today. We've known each other. What must be? I'm counting on my fingers now, my toes, but 40 years or something like that.
It's going to be 35 to 40 years at least.
Heck of a time, yeah. And we're still going strong.
Well,
but you've grown as we all have.
We met because I found out about. It's ironic, isn't it? I suddenly discovered sort of thing from my friend John at Boston Astronomers that there was an astronomy weekend every year in Horncastle, 5 miles from me.
Just down the road from where you live.
From 1973. And I didn't know about this, but you've got to bear in mind, Dad worked all the hours under the sun. He worked at the garage, and then he came home and he did bits on the side. Very naughty, I know. But in them days, we literally put the margarine on and then scraped the blowing margarine off because we were not well off at all.
But you know what, Paul? We were happy.
We were happy, yes. We were happy, sort of thing.
We used to live in a shoebox in the street. Licking the road.
Luxury. I used to dream of.
When I say cardboard box, it was more of a shoebox.
This is becoming the Dave Galvin show, and we're going to have to shut him up. So, have you got the mute button there, Pete?
Let's go to the panel, Pete.
But the Horncastle weekend, I went there in '82, sort of thing. When Patrick was there, and I started attending regularly. And it was when Peter and Linda came along, sort of thing, from the Amateur Astronomy Centre. That convinced me to come up to the very first star party, and that's where we actually met. at the first start. So it's your fault for bringing up the astronomy centre. But that is, and of course they did the interesting thing with that is that because they found out I did talks, so I started doing some of the talks, as you've already mentioned, and then that gave me bigger exposure to lots of societies, and I started getting bookings, around the country. Yeah. I mean, that's how I met Michael Bryce. Nice to see you, Michael, as well. So
Michael there, yeah.
So, and it just snowballed. That.
And you're still here to tell the stories. We're going to go to a track. I think Peter's ready to get his record on the record player.
We'll let you have a little break, Paul, and a glass of water or something, and we'll go to a track. And the track I think we'll handle now. And I've got a few more questions for Paul before we hand him over. Feed him to the panel as such. But I don't know if I can hear it. Paul,
I've just realised now why you're selling all your Astro gear, because you want to buy vinyl records, don't you? Yeah, I know. Now we know the truth.
Now you know the truth.
Now we know the truth.
I've just bought the Gong box set, Paul. All about the trilogy of the flying teapots coming from the planet Gong on Radio Gnome Invisible. So you can't beat that. How can you ever beat that? You just can't.
I mean, I was thinking that the money for nothing. I always used to think it said your chips for free.
They were, but it was chips, wasn't it? I don't know.
Well, I thought it was checks. In the end, I wanted checks as such. You checks for free.
Well, I just like chips for free anyway. But there we go. So, Paul, coming back to your career, of course, you now do some writing for Sky at Night. What is it? What is it that you actually do for Sky at Night for the listener? I mean, we know what you do, but for the listener.
Well, that was an interesting story because I actually used to write articles for Astronomy Now, and and it happened when the Sky at Night magazine was launched in 2005. Around, I think it must have been about December or January the next year, 2006. That the editor, Graham Southern, contacted me and said, we understand you've done the Messian Marathon and you wrote about it, but we've seen the article in Astronomy Now from the other year, a few years ago. Would you write it for us? So I rewrote the whole thing, sort of thing, gave it a new spin, come up with some new diagrams of where to see the potential to see all the actual Messier objects. And so I did the article and never thought, I never actually, when the magazine came out, I thought I am never going to be good enough to write the Sky at Night magazine. They are the elite. I just thought, that's it. They are the elite. I'll never touch them. And then of all things, I got this request to write this article. So I wrote the article, think anything of it. And then they came back to me and said, we actually need somebody to review some equipment, some refractors. Would you review them for us? And I said, well, I've never reviewed anything before. And I said, oh, it's all right. You just look through the night sky at them, just assess them, see what you think, and then do a write-up about it. Oh, fair enough. So I did. The mistake they made, and it was because there'd been a bit of a turmoil. I can't go into the details because of the politics, but that something happened. The previous person who did my job, I do now, had left them, and they were left in the lurch. So I did this review. And it was rubbish. I know, everybody's looking at me. Oh my God, what do you mean? The writing wasn't quite rubbish. No, what happened was, in their haste to quickly try and fill the gap and try to organize something, they organized it, but didn't realize that when you get refractors, you can have a package or you can have the OTA, the optical tube assembly. Now, the optical tube, literally, you just get the tube and you supply the finder, the diagonal, the eyepieces. So they didn't know that. So I got all this gear sent to me, 4 refractors. I mean, high quality refractors as well. We're not talking about cheap stuff. And one of them was a pure OTA. Now, I didn't know. And all I was given the brief, review these, see what they think. So I reviewed them and I downed the really low score for the one, which turned out to be one of the highest quality after the lot, So I downed it because it didn't have any of the other gear with it. Because I wasn't told it wasn't an even playing field. So, of course, they got a lot of hassle. And they came back and went, oh, why did you write it like this? I said, hang on. I didn't organize the equipment. If you'd have actually asked me, I would have chosen all packages. And they thought, what do you mean? I said, well, if you look on the websites, they actually have got packages and they've got OTAs. You should have made sure they were all either OTAs or all packages. You sound as if you know what you're talking about. No, I didn't. I just worked it out, sort of thing. Yeah. So, but they said, would you fancy doing we'll call it the reviews organizer at that time. So I said, well, I'm interested, but I've got a full-time job. Well, by then I was part-time and I was doing the talks, part of living. So they then said, right, well, you have to move down to Bristol. I said, no way. I said, no, forget it then. I can't. Lorraine's got this long-term condition. We've only just got to the bottom of, you know what it's like getting doctors on your side in your own local area. Starting again, there's absolutely no way I'm going to do that. So we left it 2 weeks and they come back and said, well, actually, we've been thinking, you can do this via phone and email. And that's the modern thing. Wow. I mean, really, that's come into its own, hasn't it, this last year, sort of thing for everybody. So I said, well, think about it. I said, we'll call you the reviews editor. Ooh, editor. Oh, that sounds good, sort of thing, Didn't exactly get the funding, the money with it, but, but it was all right. But it was all right. So I said, well, as long as I can stay at home. I said, yeah, you can do it all from home. Hey, so I was remote working years and years, Well, this will be my 15th year back with them. So I never thought it would take off. And I honestly didn't think that I would be doing this job now still, but the experience I've picked up and the equipment I've played with and dealt with and had to, and also when you book all the speakers in, all the writers in, I should say, you learn a lot from reading their reviews. So I've learned a lot about cameras in particular, sort of thing, that I never realized before. So it's been absolutely brilliant. So I've learned a lot, but I hopefully I've done a good job. I hope I have. I'm still with them. I can't have done a bad job if I'm still with them.
You've done a reasonable job. We'll give you that.
Yeah. All right,
but I mean, for the listeners that don't know, I mean, the reason I do what I do, and I've always said this, the reason I do what I do, and now, and everything that's happening, none of you would be here tonight if it wasn't for Paul. Because at the end of the day, Paul is the guy that I went to when I wanted to do what I do and asked for advice. And he was my sponsor, along with Pete Lawrence, for Fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society back in the annals of history, that is. But yeah, Paul was influential in setting me up in doing what I'm doing.
But it works both ways, Pete, because in actual fact, I got on the internet. Well, it wasn't really called the internet, was it? Well, it was sort of the internet, but it was the bulletin boards, and of course I would download pictures, through an old modem that took blooming ages, but you didn't mind because it was still cutting edge technology. It didn't matter if you waited 10 minutes for one image to download on your screen, but it was through your bulletin board that I had access to a load of astronomers and people, sort of thing, and images. So it works both ways. It really helped me.
Yeah, I mean, me and Nick Stevens, we were the first people on the planet actually to create astronomical bulletin boards.
I was worried then when you said first people on the planet.
We were the first people. just me and Nick were the first people on the planet.
Been around for a while.
Just the listeners here, you do need at the moment a male and a female.
Yeah,
it does help.
It does. But Nick, I don't know if you remember Nick, Starbase One.
Vaguely, yes.
Yeah. Well, Nick's now working for the Russian Space Agency and living in Moldova. So he married a Moldovan girl. He's moved over recently, and he's now living in Moldova. And as I say, he's working with the Russian Space Agency, creating graphics for them, because he used to create all the graphics for the planetarium at Madame Tussauds in London. He'd do all the graphics stuff for that, but now he's moved on and he's living there now. So yeah, so we're still in touch. And of course, I met you through running the bulletin board and Steve Tonkin. And it was funny because the first time I met Steve Tonkin in person was when he came to Solarsphere on our 3rd year. But I'd actually known him via the bulletin board for about 30 years.
Wow.
But we actually met in person, and I met a lot of people in person via the bulletin boards. But yeah, I don't know if you remember.
We met at Astrofest, one of the early Astrofests, because I bought your Starbase 4.
First ever Astrofest.
Yeah.
First ever Astrofest. We had a stall at it, and it was in a big market hall in Kensington before it became what it is. Yeah, we ran the first ever digital star party at UCL in London, where we actually connected 2 observatories up together by modem. Can you believe it?
Dial-up, eh?
No, it was dial-up modems between 2 observatories, and we did it live at UCL. It was cutting-edge stuff back in the early 90s, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you were, and that's all credit to you, sort of thing. It's I say I got images downloaded because of the bulletin board. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had the images from my talks. So that it works both ways.
Paul, I had a whopping telephone bill because of Peter.
Oh, exactly. Dad was
yeah.
One of the
but
bills.
it was our Mark. Our Mark was on Starbase. I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't understand this Tinternet. It wasn't even Tinternet then, was it?
Oh, it wasn't Tinternet.
That's it, yeah. And the next thing I get this bill for like 200 quid, and it's 1980, whatever it is. I'm like, hang on, this is extortion. What's this about? And I checked the accounts. It was this odd number, and it was this bulletin board, and it was him. Well, I only found out years that it was him who got the money out.
We had 5 telephone lines coming into the house, and
I paid your mortgage, mate. Bloody hell.
In this very room that's Astro Radio's in, there used to be a bank of computers, and at night you'd be lying in bed, and all you'd hear all night was as people were logging in. And I think it was there was one image. We put the first ever Voyager images up online, and one image was about 12K. Now we remember that 12K, and it used to take an hour to download.
So would that be on CGA, VGA, or Super VGA?
First ones were on CGA.
I remember it well. How many colours? 8-bit, and it was what, 16 colours?
And all the systems ran on MS-DOS 3.
4 colours, mate. 4
MS-DOS 3. There was the
MS-DOS 3. No, not even Windows. Windows hadn't even been invented at that point when we ran the bulletin board.
That was it. It was curtains then, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just MS-DOS.
Curtains operating system.
I tell you,
and everybody thinks my jokes are bad.
No, you haven't heard Andrew.
I was going to say that the best invention was Venetian blinds. Otherwise, it would have been curtains for everybody.
Oh dear.
It's an old joke.
Galvanometer started.
Yeah. Anyway, what we'll do now, I'm going to hand it to Dave to run the panel chats, and you're going to be asked a few questions by the panel, so be prepared.
Oh my God.
We're all friends. We're all gentle. We love you. Peace and love, and all that. I'm just going to pass it around the room. I'm going to go to Daz first, who's got a big pizza as his backdrop.
Yeah,
actually,
Mr. Io,
I think.
He's got colour as well of Voyager, because in actual fact, it turned out it should be a creamy mushroom pizza, not a cheese and tomato pizza.
There was those little black patches here and there, wasn't there?
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you again. As well as your astronomy, you're also a big writer as well. Have you got anything in the pipeline at the moment?
I don't pay people, folks. I don't pay them to ask these questions, you understand. Well, I mean, I'm doing, as you know, I've become quite a bit of a novelist, and I'm self-published. And I've now got the 5 novels out, 4 of them the ghost stories, and the 5th one is now developing. It's beginning to formulate, which I'm really pleased about. Because I had, anybody who's an author and who's a novelist will know that you hit a mental block at times, sort of thing. So book 5 now, I've broken that mental block, I hope. And trouble is, I go and lie down late at night, sort of. I was in the back the other night. They are, Rachel, sort of thing. I like my best creative moments are in the back. I just lie there and the ideas come, and then by the time I get downstairs, I've forgotten them all, sort of thing. But book 5's coming along. But Peter'd love this sort of thing. There is actually a sequel to The Fragility of Existence, which is my short apocalyptic one. It's not an exact sequel, it's Fragility of Survival. So that one is well on the way as well. And my first full-blown sci-fi novel, which is The Voyage of the Star Vista 4. And I'm delighted to say, and a lot of people don't probably know this, is that, Mary's the illustrator of the cover. I was so impressed with some of her paintings that that's it. I thought, no, and I contacted her. So, she's doing the cover for that one. And I think it'll probably end up being the covers for the others, because there are actually 2 sequels to that. But other than the novels, and I'm quite proud of the fact that, I'm not making a living from the novels, but I tell you, there's a lot of satisfaction, because I used to write stuff and I couldn't finish it. I had lots of ideas for stories. Even when I was at school, I wrote, when it was English essays sort of thing. and said, write whatever you like. That was it. So a science fiction story came out, but I could never finish them as a full-blown story. So the fact that once I'd finished my first ghost story and I actually completed it and I linked all of it together, I got all the little, because there's always something that you forget. And then somebody will write in, you actually forgot there's a continuity error here. Well, I'm glad to say the vast majority of nobody's come across a continuity error. They found an identification error sometimes, sort of thing, where I've identified something wrong, but that's a minor thing. So to finish a story gave me the impetus to carry on writing. But of course, the other thing that I really like doing, and it's been an absolute gut wrenching year, is the night scenes. Because the night scenes, I've been doing it since, 2000. The issue was the 2000 issue. So I started that in late 1999 because there was an error in a very big set of errors in what was then a publication that you got quite regularly. I won't go into details, but it inspired me to start writing just for my students. And I mentioned it on Radio Lincolnshire. And I had 200 people contacting me asking if it was publicly available and they could buy it. So my poor printer nearly died. In fact, he did die. I had to replace it, sort of thing, because the poor thing, when you've got a 32-page publication and you're chucking out 200 copies, your poor printer finally put his little wheels up into the sky. Oh, Mary, which cat is that? Go on. Which
Mono.
One? Mono. Just walk across, folks. For those who... it's a bit like the black and white days of snooker for those who have got a black and white TV. The cat just walked across and all I basically saw was a tail wafting across. Tales of the unexpected, as you might say. Some people will remember that. So night scenes has been a bit of a, it's been a love of my life in a sense. I know, Lorraine, I know. And she's downstairs listening and thinking, what? I'm your love of your life. But night scenes, it's been my little babies, you might say. It's been, and I've tried to expand it and make it more, user friendly. So to have a year where we couldn't have the printed, we won't have a printed copy for probably next year, because the trouble is I sell the most when I go to societies. And because I haven't been able to go to societies, and we've still got the uncertainty of how we start and whether societies are going to start in September. And I've had a lot of societies basically say we're, like Dave, you were saying, so you're edging your bets and you don't quite know what the situation is. So I can't take the risk. I can't afford to take the risk to have a load printed and then have them like the 2001 edition. 2000 edition was sat in the conservatory in boxes full because I couldn't sell them.
Well, Paul, is it possible? Sorry, Daz. You carry on, Daz. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say it was a bit of a flippant remark. But in this new novel, is there any bosoms bathed in moonlight? Where you gone? For the listeners, he's choking.
You don't do that when I'm drinking a sparkling water drink. My God. That gives me a vivid memory of courting Lorraine in Coventry down at her parents, her mum and her stepfather's, and they gave me a fizzy orange drink. And I was so thirsty, I took a big gulp, swallowed it, and of course the fizziness just expanded, and I passed out and clapped onto the floor. But for some reason, I'm one of those things. I absolutely shocked them because I didn't just pass out, because I literally did pass out.
Yeah.
I hit the floor. Somehow that woke me up. I bounced back up and carried on as normal.
I wondered where you're going with that story. I was talking about bosoms bathed in moonlight.
It's a shock sort of thing, I was drinking
you know when you've been tangoed.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good. So, I'm always very wary now about drinking fizzy drinks and taking little sips, etc. But what on earth are you on? Oh, I think I know now what you're on about. That was in Fragility of Existence sort of thing. And Pete there, yes, he knows he's guilty because he announced it once to everybody sort of thing that was the main thrust of the story. It wasn't. That was just a tiny little bit I was trying to be realistic sort of thing. What would happen if a couple was sort of thrust and trying to hide away from aliens and they only just woke up and they were in the nuddy? I mean, you've made more of it than it was sort of thing. The main story is the science fiction bit.
He said it was the only bit he'd read.
Yeah, me and Julian.
I suspect that.
Me and Julian, who proofread it, we got stuck on that page, didn't we, Julian?
Yeah.
Only for a week.
I assume this is not an illustrated book.
Yeah, do they do a pop-up version of that?
You're making me sweat, sort of thing. It's warm already in this room. And Julian's just put up a copy of the book.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the pop-up version, the 3D version.
Yeah, we're not the BBC. We're okay.
Say, Dave, let's keep it nice and near.
Please, that's
okay. I am a realist, though. I do hate when, you know, simple things like, for example, even in that book, I actually put at the point that they were terrified about going to the toilet in case the sound of the toilet alerted the aliens. Because let's face it, you can't go to the toilet quiet.
No.
I'm looking at the reactions on everybody.
You speak for yourself, mate.
Yeah.
I do have a story of Prince Charles visiting our hospital to open one of the units, and that the toilet that was brought with them was tested, and it had to be not audible from a set distance, a minimal distance. You couldn't hear it used or flushed.
4 miles.
Probably 4 mile.
The Queen was the same when she used to turn up everywhere. Yeah.
But God bless your mum, and so on. Okay, let's get back to the astronomy.
Yeah,
so these
Paul.
books, Paul, you've been doing books for a long time, obviously, and your night scenes, which I absolutely love, so well illustrated, and it is excellent quality. It really is. Can you not do this? Instead of selling the hard copies, can you not do this by email or
well, I mean,
online shopping? That's the words.
The online shopping. I mean, I didn't get the orders last year when I announced that I was doing it as a PDF, and I got a limited number, nothing like the amount that I normally sell. So that made me very wary about trying to do a printed edition. But I am producing, because I did it in 2 parts for this year. I am now working on part 2. But the good thing is, of course, what I did was I expanded it. So unlike the print edition, which you have a set number of pages, and you have to, if you enlarge it, you have to go by a set number of pages extra. So it's always 4 extra pages. It's not, you can't just add 1. Whereas with a PDF, you can add 1 sort of thing. So so when I did the PDF for the first part of the year, instead of, it should have been half, which would have made it about 34 pages. Well, it was 50 pages. And because what I did was I added an individual page to each of the monthly sections and added more information. And I say it's harder to do that print-wise because the print costs start to start. And of course, you can't just add 1 page. It's mushrooms. So, so I'm working on part 2. And, and so I will let people know. I mean, the beauty about doing it as a PDF or a Kindle sort of thing is that you don't have the cost of printing to worry about and the cost of postage as well. So so I will.
Is it fair to say that it's more for the Northern Hemisphere as opposed to the Southern Hemisphere? Bear in mind our worldwide audience.
Yes, it is really, because I've always been a bit wary about trying to do too much in one go. One of the things that I remember from subscribing to Sky and Telescope for all those years was that I usually went straight to the section at the centre for what was happening in the night sky. Anything to do with the deep sky in particular, I was fascinated with. And, and I would read it and then I'd realize that the charts were set for 40 degrees north. So, the latitude, it's clear that they could see further south, and often they'd refer to things that were low down in the south, which were physically impossible for us. So I tend to stick to our latitude and say there's a bit of a range, but, you've got to bear that in mind. And longitude wise sort of thing, again, the time difference starts to play a big role. And that was the other thing with the Sky and Telescope charts. You had to take into account sort of thing that the time difference. So if they mentioned a particular event, say an occultation, you pretty much knew that it wouldn't happen for you, sort of thing. So it is quite a complex. It's hard to put over to some people. Now, I literally, when I did Astrofest many years ago, I was stood on a stand and a friend had said I could have a piece of their stand if I helped them and I could sell the books. And somebody came up, picked up the night scenes, looked through it, put it down, and as they walked away, turned to the friend, I could knock that up in 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
And I literally could have leapt over that table.
They haven't got a clue, mate.
But I am such a nice person. People can't see me laughing there, the sarcasm. But no, it was quite rude. I mean, he really said it he said it loud enough. He knew I would hear. There was no way he didn't say it quietly. He just turned around and said, I could knock that up in 5 minutes. And I thought it took me 3 months. Because I make sure the diagrams are right. I check the date. I mean, errors happen. I had a lunar phase on one month one of the lunar phases had got the date out wrong by 1 day. Oh, God, didn't hear the end of it.
The world's end, eh?
Emails, you know.
I want my money back. I want my money back.
Of your night scenes, and I was very disappointed in finding an error. I said, mention an error. You found one. Well done.
Julie's just had to pop out. He's got another meeting somewhere.
That's terrible sort of thing. We're going to rag him about that sort of having to leave for another meeting. This is the important one, surely.
Of course,
it's got me on it.
Yep. Okay, well, let's go to one of all the panelists there, Kevin. Kevin, anything to ask Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Oh, there you are, Kevin. I couldn't find you, Kevin, for a second. Everybody's in different positions on the screen for me.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Good to see you again. First time I met you, I don't know whether you remember, it's back in probably in 86 or 87. You presented at the Bedford Club.
Oh, yes, talking at the
in Bedford School Theatre, the big sort of rate seat theatre. And I can't remember what you talked about because my jaw was on my chest most of the time, just because of the amount of energy that you were expelling in the presentation. And yeah, it blew me away. But what I think we've all come to know about you, and you're exhibiting it again tonight, is that now you actually expel 10 times as much energy as you did back in 86. So the question really is, where the heck do you get your energy from, and how many thousand calories a day do you take to feed the machine?
Is he orange?
Is he orange? It could be. I've never seen Paul overweight all the years that I've known him.
Well,
he's never changed.
No, I won't stand up, you know.
No, don't shatter the dream. Don't shatter the dream, man.
But yes, I used to be an incredibly thin person. I mean, I have to say I was too thin, really, sort of thing. But I have to say things changed when I met Lorraine. I think it's contentment, sort of. You meet the soul person, soul of my life, sort of thing down there. And we're going to wax lyrical now, sort of thing. But no, I think. I don't know. I always joke about the fact that when I was young, I had very bright, gingery red hair. And I've always said I'm the one with the Duracell top. And that's why I can probably keep going. But
remember it well.
I don't know. I remember seeing a talk many years ago. I travelled down to Hurstmansow for a Federation of Astronomical Society meeting. Me and my friend Bryn, who sadly passed away in late 1988 from a brain tumour. I've never forgotten that. He was a good friend. My 10-inch telescope is his original telescope. It's called the BT-10. The Bryn Tongue 10-inch. So I'll keep using that for because it's a good little telescope. Well, 10-inch is a good telescope. But we went down to Hurstmansow. Now from Lincolnshire, this is before the M25 had been built. So literally we had to navigate through London around the inner ring road, whatever you call it. And it took us ages sort of thing to get down there. But we set off at something like, I think, 3:30 in the morning to get there. And so you can imagine we're tired. I mean, I was the main driver sort of thing. Because Bryn didn't, he said, I haven't got the confidence, I can't face London. So I just did that. I like driving. I've always loved driving. Doesn't bother me at all, long distance. So, you know, we went down there. And I always remember that we got there and the talks, I was really fascinated with the talk sort of thing. I was waiting for the first one there. We got in time for the first one, sat down on and now we're going to talk about star formation and this, that, and blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, it was so boring. He put me to sleep. I literally fell asleep. So did Bryn, and I think half the audience as well. It wasn't until people started clapping that was, you know. And I said to Bryn, for heaven's sake, if I ever get like that, shoot me, you know. And he said he'd never actually let me forget that. Sort of, but we're glad to say he didn't have to shoot me. Sadly, he's no longer with us. But I took away from that the fact that he made what should have been an interesting subject absolutely horrendous. And I came away from that. I said, I am not going to be boring, you know. So, you know, I started and I think somewhere along the line I made a bit of a quip. It was probably at the astronomy centre because you could get away with anything, couldn't you, Dave?
Certainly could.
Especially when you're in a blooming great big marquee with a blooming generator going, you're battling against a generator. So that's the other reason why I needed to be loud, was because the generator was going. So
you do know that generator's gone off now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it ran out of fuel many years ago.
Now I know. So you know, I put me all into it. You know, I live and breathe the talks.
It's passion for the subject, isn't it? And that comes across so well. If I had to describe you in one word, Paul, it'd be dynamic. because you are, in how you portray the subject, how you describe it, your enthusiasm, your mannerisms. You're just so live. You get your money's worth, and there's no pun intended. But yeah, excellent stuff. Anything further, Kev?
No, I think that's it. Just to say, Paul, I think I speak for everybody. We've always enjoyed your talks, and keep going, mate.
Yeah, keep on going. That's it. Yeah.
I have it's a bit of a silly saying. I've always said to Lorraine, sort of thing, that the way I want to go out of this world is literally I want to give a talk, everybody's applauding, I walk off, and then I drop dead.
Do it, Tommy Cooper.
Tommy Cooper. Yeah, that's it. Do it, Tommy Cooper.
Was it Tommy Cooper that did that?
I remember seeing that when Tommy Cooper was on stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Same here. Yeah. And I was just waiting for the joke. No, I knew the magic trick he was doing. Yeah. I just thought, okay. And then the curtains closed.
When the curtains closed, yeah.
So sad, but what a way to go, and I can't think what the astronomical equivalent is.
Love, and I have to say that's. I mean, obviously, I don't want to go yet. That's what tickled me about getting the Sir Arthur Clarke Lifetime Achievement Award around about 9 years ago. I thought, hang on, I've got a bit more time yet.
Yeah, it's like Monty Python, is it? I'm not dead yet.
I appreciate the award, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to stop. I want to carry on.
Okay, let's go to another panelist. Roger, anything to ask or add?
Well, I just wondered what Paul's favourite aspect of astronomy is for him. What really gets it going?
Although I like seeing the planets, I am a deep sky enthusiast. I love the deep sky, looking at and finding out galaxies, nebulae, and whatnot. I just love that. And in fact, some of the early short talks I did at the Astronomy Centre were, how to find certain objects in the night sky. So I love that. And it wasn't imaging. I have to say, I used to be visual. I am more imaging now. Boo, hiss, so we all go. But I mean, the other night, in actual fact, we had a clear night, and I was out with the SG 500. I don't want to sound big-headed with the telescope, but for once, instead of imaging, I visually toured around the sky, and I suddenly remembered the love I had. When I looked at M3, when you're looking with a 20-inch telescope, I mean, it literally felt like that, 2001: A Space Odyssey moment. My God, it's full of stars, and it was just absolutely crammed full of stars, so deep sky is definitely, one of the main things I really like. I do occasionally look at the moon, sort of thing, but again, it's up there, isn't it? So I can see it. but I do look at the moon a few times. But I have to say, deep sky is usually the main thing I go for. So there you are, Roger, sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Whether it's wide field, such as the Milky Way you've got behind you in your screen now, or whether in actual fact it is closing in and looking at a cluster. And I like hunting out some of these fainter stuff that most people don't look at. Sort of thing, Oh, Simon's been looking at Mercury, sort of thing. Oh yeah, I must admit, I really do like hunting out Mercury in the evening sky. I really should be an all-nighter sort of thing, but I'm getting old now. You understand, even staying up all night sort of thing. I'm getting to that point. I'm making excuses now. Oh, I've got a bit of a chill in my back. I think I ought to pack up. And in actual fact, Peter will identify this. When you've had back trouble, cold is not a good thing for your back. And when you've got telescope equipment to pack up, it's all right being brave and pushing through it. I'm looking at Mary because she goes out. And I don't know how you do it in your pajamas out in the middle of a field. We're talking astronomy now, folks, looking at noctilucent clouds or aurora or capturing sort of the Milky Way panoramas, etc. If I had a hat, I'd take it off for you, sort of thing, Mary. But I have to admit, sort of thing, a few times now, I felt the back tightening. And I thought, if I don't pack away now, I'm going to be in trouble. And Paul Lorraine is not fit enough to be able to come out and find me and get me out. Well, I look after her. So, she physically could not come out and help me if something went wrong. So, that has always been a bit of a worry with me. If I push it too far and I'm the one in trouble outside late at night, I could be lying there. One of my nightmares is that I'm lying there all through the night, freezing to death. And then she only finds out when she wakes up in the morning, the bed's still empty on my side. And then she thinks it must have been a good night, and then finds me out in the back. you know. So I like to. You've got to be practical. You've got to know that point, and I know, Mary, you do.
Not always.
Does she? I don't think she does.
No, I'm trying to be polite, sort of thing, you know. But,
I know.
You've got to be practical. You've got to make sure that you. I mean, I care for Lorraine, so you know, I have to make sure that I don't compromise things to the point whereby I couldn't look after her, and I can't put her in that position as well, sort of thing. I think she's a bit emotional downstairs now by listening to that, because she hears this as a radio. But you know, but no, you've got to be practical. But I must admit, when I was younger, I would stay out. I mean, I literally did stay out from early evening in the winter. You know, so 5 o'clock, I'd have a quick tea, and then I'd be out through till dawn. You know, and that is horrendous. And of course, if you do the Messier Marathon, you've got to do that. So, but that was 1993 when I did the complete marathon from Portugal, and then I repeated it on our honeymoon in 98 when I planned to go out to Koa on the honeymoon.
I'm sure she's listening downstairs and not going.
Lorraine is listening. She knows very well. The reason why we got married was I'd worked out the best time to do the Messier Marathon, and we always said we'd go out to the Algarve, to the Koa, to have our honeymoon. So I worked out the time. So we had the wedding about a week before we flew out to Koa, sort of thing. But the joke was the best man came out with us, and so did a family that was with us actually at the wedding. So the joke was we brought out half the wedding party. So Lorraine just said that just downstairs, brought out the wedding party.
Well, I've mentioned before, Paul, on here, Rob Johnson on his honeymoon was observing the supernova. In the southern hemisphere, San Juliac, blah blah blah.
Minus 89,604.
That's the one. I usually remember it, but I've forgotten it. Well, but yeah, he's on the balcony imaging that on his honeymoon. But
I was due on my honeymoon. We were due to go to Patrick Moore's house, but he sent me a card a couple of days before we were due to go, and he says, "I'm sorry, I won't be here. I'm going to go to Florida to watch the launch of the Jupiter Prune." And I still haven't worked out what this Jupiter Prune. Well, you don't remember his typewriter. Well, he typed Prune.
Oh, yeah, there was always the odd letter, wasn't it?
So I think Catherine's got the card at the moment in me stamp things. He says, "Sorry, we won't be there, Peter, but I'm going to Florida to see the launch of the Jupiter Prune."
Well, Patrick was brilliant at replying to people, because my first astronomy books, I remember, was the Observer's Book of Astronomy by Patrick Moore. So I had that, and I wore it out, so I ended up having to buy another one, which was never the same. That first original one, which had Ursa Major and the Aurora drawn above it, sort of thing. That was the one I had, and several other books. But I wrote to Patrick, asking him about the moons of Uranus and how many he had seen, because by then I'd got the 14-inch telescope. So I wrote to him, and of course he typed back the usual postcard type back, said, and you can almost hello, indeed.
He types in his voice, doesn't he?
He does. I've actually seen all 5 with my 15-inch reflector, sort of thing, from Chelsea. So good luck, and I do hope you succeed.
Not sincerely, Patrick. Good evening. But you always did a good Patrick impression.
I've got the same initial, PM. So come on.
Can't argue with that. Well, I'm going to bring Mary in now, because
Mary's going to get her own back now on me.
you say about Mary having a rest, taking it easy. She doesn't, because what were you imaging the other day? Aircraft. And I said I took. Sorry, I can't remember. I took 259 pictures. I've just got to edit them now. You can take the finger off the button.
No,
you do realise that Mary has cloned herself. So actually, because I can't see how.
There's got to be clones of Mary. Yeah.
Red kites today, wasn't it?
Kites, yes.
Oh, every day red kites. Someone referred to them as tackly seagulls or pigeons. Yeah. We have so many.
Yeah, I'll swap you some of ours. You have our chip-eating seagulls. We have awful nasty things. So Mary,
I've got two. One question is kind of 2 parts, and one other quick one. First of all, if you could go back through history and look at any astronomical event, what would you choose?
Ooh. Right.
And while you're thinking about that, I'm also interested where you get your inspiration for your novels. I really enjoy your novels, and I'm wondering whether you have had an experience that you can't explain, or where the inspiration comes from for the James Hansen stories.
to answer the first question, I think one of the things I really would like to do, and I'd have to learn French this, but I would like to be with Charles Messier, you know, and especially that first object that inspired him to actually start. And the first object sort of thing, you know, he actually listed on it as Messier 1, but I don't think that was his first object because he had observed a number of objects before. But that moment when he started writing them down and noting them, and because he was so annoyed because he wanted to see comets, and of course he kept finding these fuzzy blobs. And that's one of the things I always say in my talks is I absolutely adore fuzzy blobs. And, you know, and I think that should be a technical term personally. I have not yet managed to get it into any of my writing of the sky at night sort of thing, you know, because it's not technical enough. But yeah, being with Charles Messier would be quite something, I think, to be with him when he starts it. Although, of course, he wouldn't think of it as a piece of history. He was just writing it down just to ignore them.
Yeah, I'd love for him to see photographs of his object catalogue because he wasn't interested remotely in what they were, just what they weren't. And I think he'd love to see that now.
Yes, exactly, sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the, you know, I mean, you hear a lot of things from people that, you know, in history, they don't realise the significance. And possibly even in their lifetime, they don't realise the significance. I mean, what Charles Messier would have made of the Messier Marathon now, he would have been gobsmacked. He probably would have been shocked and horrified because, as you say, his main reason that, if that's the right thing, I'm terrible at French, as you can tell, but the main reason was that he wanted to avoid these fuzzy blobs that could be confused with comets. So, you know, I mean, some of them, of course, you look at them and think M40, 2 stars, a double star, but you've got to put yourself in his position with the instruments he had at his disposal. And those instruments sort of thing, they weren't anything. I mean, a lot of them weren't anything better than a pair of binoculars. You imagine a pair of cheap binoculars at that. So, you know, we have to bear that in mind. We have to put ourselves in the same context with that. So, yeah, definitely Charles Messier, but I think he would be actually horrified. I think he would be horrified if he thought that his lifetime's work, looking and searching out comets, and what do we talk about? The objects he wanted to avoid. You know, I think he'd be horrified, you know, sort of thing about
He did actually discover 3 comets, didn't he?
Oh, he did in his lifetime. And he missed Halley's Comet by a short amount of time. Was really missed when, I think it was Pallich that actually found it, sort of thing, you know, in Christmas. So I think, as usual, sort of thing, Charles had bad weather at that particular time and didn't pick it up. And so he was horrified that he'd been beaten to it because that was one of the goals, that was one of the prizes at the time for is Halley's Comet going to return? And so they started searching the area that they thought it should repair back. But he's certainly one of the characters that I would like to be next to see how. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to be stood next to him because he'd probably think, "Yeah, the Englishman." But yeah. Having said that, international cooperation between scientists was fantastic. We could be at war with each other, and the scientists would be writing letters to each other, telling about the latest discoveries. So it transcended national ideas at that time, which was great, sort of thing. And I like to think that carries on today, sort of thing. I was getting worried there. Andy Briggs has just changed his backdrop and whatnot. It's a nice blue sky behind. He's looking up into the sky as if he can see something. Sort of thing. You're not observing, are you, Andy? Are you in an observatory and you roll back the roof and it's clear?
No, I'm sadly not, Paul. We've here in Catalonia, we've just come to the end of our rainy season, so we've had a week of rain and thunderstorms, but at least I know that after that, we're going to get 6 months of unbroken sunshine, so it's not so bad.
Excuse me, Paul, well, I've thrown my water bottle.
What sunshine?
This is the Iceland volcano.
Oh, yes.
This video is, I don't know whether you can see it, a large portion of the back wall of the cone has just collapsed.
Oh, wow.
And it causes a massive lava fountain. Which you'll see in a moment. It's totally unbelievable.
For those who are on radio,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So you've got to describe it in exquisite detail as such.
Right. Well, it's a volcano.
Okay. Anything further, Mary?
Oh yes, I didn't finish with Mary, did I? Sort of thing. Sorry, Mary. How do I put this? Because I'm a scientist and I shouldn't believe in ghosts, and I have not seen a ghost in modern times, but when I was young, there were things that happened that I attributed potentially to ghosts. I did have experiences where I thought, wow, I wonder whether now, if I could go back, I would go, oh, that's just a light reflection, or that's just a thing, sort of thing. You know, I'd probably find an answer for it. But I've drawn on those to help me inspire with the James Hansen Ghost series. So it is a shock to me that, you know, what was the novel that I completed first? It was a blooming ghost story, not a science. I mean, so no end of people have said to me, ghosts? I'd have thought you'd have written science fiction. Well, actually, I tell you, writing science fiction is hard because people are so you got that element wrong, sort of thing. You know, you wouldn't fly through space like that, sort of thing, etc. So, but you know, I mean, a lot of them have come from what I had in experiences. But I do believe that if I could go back now, I would identify them and know what it was, you know, and it probably wouldn't have been a mystery. But it is very handy to have that sort of those experiences to draw upon. And I do like it. Oh, I've just seen the fountain there in.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. About 300 meters, they say.
The CGI in this is fantastic, folks.
it's the color that gets me. The color is
very
amazing.
red, very, very intense.
Very red, isn't it? Yeah.
It's interesting sort of thing because when I first did my talks about Voyager at Saturn, there was a few people who turned around and said Enceladus could be icy volcanism, and they got quickly shot down. And I always thought, if I'd have said, you know, there's something like cryovolcanism, you know, my career would have been ended. And cryovolcanism is a blooming science now, sort of thing. So, you know, I just wish I'd actually been braver and actually said it, sort of thing. I think you'll find there's icy volcanoes, because it does sound completely wrong, doesn't it?
Icy volcanoes? You must be crazy, man. My goodness.
But, so, Mary, so there's so I have drawn, and I do like, I can imagine spooky things, sort of thing, you know. So I always think, what would make me jump, or sort of what would unnerve me? So the mysteries are more of a mystery. I don't want mine to be horrific, too horrific. I like the mystery element, sort of thing, and that translates into the science fiction. Because I think you've got the first draft, or the main draft of Voyage of Star Vista 4, and it's the mystery that young Charisse has as she's on this interstellar voyage, sort of thing. She starts to pick up on certain things that are happening. So I like mysteries. Me and Lorraine watch no end of mystery things, sort of things. You know, it's ridiculous. We record loads of stuff, and you know, we stream a lot as well, sort of thing. So you know, but one of the things I've stopped doing is reading science fiction, which I ought to get back to. And I don't read the ghost stories because I'm worried that I'll get influenced. And nowadays, of course, you've always got somebody who'll turn around and say, "You've taken that from such and such a book." And I think, well, subjects are covered so well in TV, radio, and in books. Somewhere along the line, you're going to do something that you're going to find in a famous TV series or whatever. But I tell you what, this is something I don't think I've ever told anybody before, was that just before Star Wars come out, when I was in sixth form, I was writing what was going to be a trilogy. And it was all about a war between Mars and Earth. And that the main character was, well, it was me, actually, you know, but and it was based in a sixth form college. And he was actually a Martian in disguise to get information about general Earth, but he decides he prefers Earth, sort of thing, you know. And we end up at war with Mars, sort of thing, whatnot. And I got it all that. Then Star Wars came out, and just scrapped a lot because I thought, that's it. If I do my bit and it ever gets published, they'll think I've ripped off Star Wars. So I abandoned it. So it sort of put me off completely, sort of thing, you know, doing anything like that, because I was just worried that people might think, oh, I know where you got that from. But nowadays, I think to myself, well, there's so much out there that you're bound to have some similarity. With you could find similarities with the ghost stories. You can find similarities in the blooming sci-fi as well. I'll tell you one thing that put me off nearly with Star Vista 4 was suddenly they did that film Passengers, which sounded as if it was going to be a passenger ship sort of thing, people on it. Then when I watched it, I thought, I've nothing to worry about. Completely different story. And again, of course, now I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, gosh, Lorraine, the chap who was House, Gregory House. The character, the actor.
Yeah, him.
Hugh Laurie.
Hugh Laurie.
my prompt, Lorraine did acting at, she was in the local acting in the sort of thing. Oh gosh, she was a proper actress. She actually could do acting and whatnot. And but she also did prompting. So she's brilliant as a prompt downstairs. She was shouting up, "Hugh Laurie! It's Hugh Laurie!"
Right, Paul, on that note of prompting, I'm going to prompt you just have a breather, have a drink of water. Peter's going to play a track, and then we're going to come back with a couple of more questions.
One second. Just the finish was there was a TV comedy series with Hugh Laurie recently where they were on a starship with passengers, but it turned out that he actually didn't know how to be a captain, but he was the captain by accident.
Oh dear.
So I nearly stopped then. The voyage of the Star Vista 4 was nearly scrapped then because I thought it'd be too much. But anyway, so I'll shut up now. It's over to Pete.
Peter, get your needle on that record.
I'll get the needle on the record. We're going to move over to another track now, and the track. Okay, Dave.
Thank you, Pete. What an enthusiastic group of listeners we got out there. Lovely. So next question from our panel is from Michael.
Thanks, Dave. Paul, good to see you here tonight. I just wanted to comment on your unique but fantastic way of presenting. And I was just wondering, do you think you were ever subconsciously enthused by the late, great Sir Patrick Moore?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first book I ever remember getting properly that really was for the night sky was the Observer Book of Astronomy. And I absolutely, I mean, that ended up totally disintegrating because it was just so used so much. Because I say we were in such a dark village, but it was a hamlet really sort of thing. We didn't have enough. The house was class it as a village. So it was really dark. So Patrick's Observer's Book of Astronomy was the classic. So that's how I learned the constellations of the night sky with that. So
yeah, I was thinking more about the. I was thinking more about the way you present, the way with your particular style of speech, sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh, Andy's just shown he's got the Book of Astronomy. Oh dear.
Oh dear.
I'm going to get upset now.
Andy's got his library at the back there. He's just waiting for the subjects to come up.
But the thing is, though, I mean, I couldn't see the Sky at Night TV program. It was too late, and my dad was very strict. So the TV went off at 10 o'clock, and it was always what they wanted to watch, mum and dad, rather than us kids. And of course, we being young, I had to be in bed anyway at a certain time, sort of thing. So I couldn't really say the Sky at Night TV program was a big influence because we weren't allowed to watch it. And as usual, typical sort of thing, certain broadcasting corporation, I can't really the name, but you get the idea. They put it on a ridiculous.
You can name the broadcasting company. That we're okay with that. Sort of thing, BBC have done some great stuff, and we thank them for all of the years.
Job with the Sky at Night, BBC Sky at Night magazine, but never mind. But you get the idea. It was very late. So it wasn't influenced as it was with a lot of people. But of course, getting onto the speaker circuit meant that I actually met up with Patrick. And of course, I already knew about Patrick because of his books. I'd started buying his books once I'd got my own income from Marks and Spencer's. And so, that was a great thing. I could buy the books, and I was buying lots of Patrick's books, and lots of others as well. And my first convention was talking to the BAA meeting at Doncaster. That was 1984. And they asked me if I'd speak. Oddly enough, I got a request, can you talk about the Martian moons? For something like 40 minutes. And I said, well, A, I've never tackled the subject. And B, I mean, there's hardly any slides, about 7 or 8 pictures at most that you've got the Martian moon from the Viking missions, and that's it. So 40 minutes of that. And anyway, you really want somebody who knows about Mars, not me. So I said no. And I said, come back in about a month if you've still stuck. Well, I shouldn't have said that, should I, sort of thing? Because a month later, they came back and said, no, we can't find anybody else. I tell you what, it's all about the moons of the solar system, and nobody's talking about the moons of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So if you do Mars, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I said, well, you've just added about another 4 slides. So it makes it about 11 or 12 at most. And I said, okay, leave it with me. And I produced the slides. And that was when I met Patrick at the convention for the first time, when I had to speak after him. I had to follow Patrick. I mean, how the heck do you follow, the legend that is Patrick Moore? What was worse was that I went up there and I had to go straight after work. So I finished work and hightailed it up an hour and a half to Doncaster to give my talk. So it was in the afternoon. And basically it was a case of, I had never spoken to a convention before. So I was already nervous. So I said, right, here's my slides. Where's the projector? It's a Kodak carousel. We can't use your...
I remember those.
You must give us the slides. So I was nervously giving them the slides. You know how to put them in? Yes. go down to the front and sit at the front because you're one of the speakers sort of thing. So I sat down at the front. Around about 10 minutes later, I got a tap on the shoulder. Mr. Money, we've dropped your slides on the floor. Sort of
no.
So I had to go back. You know, I was a nervous wreck as it was. You know, my knees were going on me and I was terrified because I had to follow Patrick, who's ravaging away like he always does at high speed. Oh, fancy that, folks. But
Paul,
you know,
I can only assume that when you came on after Patrick, they just thought it was a mini Patrick.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Well,
a clone that hadn't developed fully into Big
nearly
Patrick.
didn't happen. It nearly didn't happen. We got the slide sorted out, and I actually went down to the front. I was a wreck by then, and the front that you had to go up on stage. You were in a spotlight. I'd never had that before, and there's a microphone in front of me, and I didn't speak for the first minute. I was just absolutely terrible. My knees were going. And then something said to me, don't be an idiot. You know, Patrick's out there, just talk. And once I started, well, you know the history. I couldn't stop. But I was so nervous. I did a 40-minute talk in 23 minutes flat. And in fact, when I came down off the stage, well, actually, before I came down, they put it open to questions. And who did ask the first question?
Patrick.
Yeah. You know, but it wasn't a question. It was more of a, it was, I believe I typed a letter to you sort of thing, you know, and we discussed the moons of Uranus and I've seen all 5 with my 15-inch telescope sort of thing. And so, yes, yes, very well done. Really enjoyed it. And I came away. Sort of
Excellent.
Yeah. And after that, they said, I thought I'd done a rubbish job and I wasn't going to charge them anything. And when it came to the summing up, you know how they always sum up at the end and they said, thank you, this speaker and that. And I thought I was dreading it, getting to my bit. And they said, well, I've never seen so many slides of the Martian moons in my life. And the amount of information on the outer moons is absolutely amazing. Well done, Mr. Money. Well, right, that's it. I'm going to charge.
Endorsed.
And when I talked to Patrick afterwards, I met up with him just briefly before we had to leave. And I said to him, look, this is my first convention. What did you think? And quite frankly, you did a very good job. And the most important thing, you faced the audience. You didn't look away. The worst speakers are the ones that turn away and talk to the screen and not the audience. You must talk to the audience. And you did that. So very good. Well done. And that was it. That might suck up. And I thought, if I can do this, I can go anywhere. And
can I just ask another
Mike, can we make it very, very, very quick because we've got a couple of other questions from our other panelists.
I know you do a great talk on the Voyager missions, for instance, Paul, and I know you like the space missions like that. Do you follow the human space flight as well, that kind of things?
A little bit, but I am in favour of it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't follow it quite as much as I probably should do.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I learned my lesson. I gave a talk about Apollo to a society where they had an absolute Apollo nut in the audience. And, you know, and he realized I'd made an error with the engines on one of the stages. And he needed to tell me the actual engine serial numbers for each of the stages, for each of the missions. And that's why I think you should be classed as an astro nut. Sort of thing, you know? So it should be put away, really. But
yeah, so I noticed the rockets in the background on your shelf. You see,
oh yes, the Explorer 1 and the actual Explorer 1 satellite as well.
Yes, of course.
The orange one next to it is Thunderbird 3.
Of course, yeah. Okay,
anyway,
thanks, Dave. Thanks, Paul.
But there we go. Yeah. So
okay, thanks very much, Mike. Thank you, Paul. Can we go over to Rachel? Rachel in the bathtub. Any questions, Rach?
Yeah, sort of the opposite to Mary's, really. If before sort of our days are up, or your time, our time, what astronomical triumph would you like to see achieved?
Oh, wow. Well, I suppose, and this harks back to what Michael's just said, ironically, people on Mars. And the reason why I say that is that I used to collect the Ron PG Tips Race into Space card series.
Yeah, I remember those.
And the very last one, well, I mean, this was sort of like, I think it must have been early 80s, but the last one had humans reaching Mars in 1986. What are we doing?
Yeah. Yes.
What are we doing? We still ain't got there. So for those who now need to replace your microphone, I do apologise as such. But I've been waiting since then because I, like a lot of people, I thought Apollo would be the launch pad. Sorry, Michael, that's a good. The point, I honestly thought it would just take over from there, and we would be on the moon. We would have moon bases. we'd have radio. I mean, I dreamt of radio telescope. I'm not into a great deal of radio astronomy, but I could see the value of having a radio telescope on the far side of the moon, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I thought all this would happen by now. You know, I literally thought we'd be talking about, you know, people now moving out. I mean, 2001: A Space Odyssey. I say they had to refine that because originally the original mission that Arthur C. Clarke wrote was the monolith was out at Iapetus at Saturn. Yeah. And so, but when they realized that they wouldn't get humans out that far by 2001, they revised it back to Jupiter. And we hadn't even got that far. We hadn't even got to Mars yet, Rachel. So it's frustrating because I really thought that it was a launch pad for we would be out. And by now, we would be literally out colonizing the solar system. And, you know, politics get in the way and money. Oh, money, look at that.
Hey.
Money's worth Paul.
By the way, it is the love of money which is the root of all evil, which I feel sorry for Paul Lorraine.
I was going to say, is that what Lorraine says? Lorraine, if you're listening, we love you.
Giggling downstairs, I can hear her.
She is. I'm exchanging Facebook Messenger messages with her at the same time.
The trouble when people are friends with Lorraine, separate to me, so I don't know what goes on, Kath and Mary.
Yes, Paul, be very careful.
But Rachel, I hope that sort of explains. You know, I mean, yeah, I would like to see people on Mars, but I would like also to see an orbit around Uranus and Neptune. After Voyager, that was I mean, to me, flyby is the first go, orbiter is the next stage, then you go for landers. But we've gone so mad on Mars, you know, I really think there's a lot more to find at Uranus, a lot more to find at Neptune, sort of thing. And I would really, and now we've seen Pluto, I mean, that's trying out for an orbiter. So I would like to see those 3 planets. And please, NASA, before I pop me clogs.
Yeah.
That's going to be a long time off. Okay, can
Did you say Pluto was a planet?
Oh, let's come back to that if we have 1 minute left. Let's go to Kath. Well, any comments, Kath? Any questions?
Hi, Paul. My question was, obviously, we're going to Mars to look for signs of life, but where else do you think in the universe is a good bet? Personally, I think some of the moons out there are a good bet to have a look. Where would you send a probe, Paul?
Yeah.
If NASA are listening.
Well, we've got to steer clear of the Uranus joke sort of thing, because you know. But no, I mean the icy moons are now showing too many signs of, you know, potential. It's heat. Heat is an important source. So if you've got cryovolcanism, you've got a heat source internally, which is creating melted water. Now all you need is water and the right minerals and whatnot, you know. And as long as you've got a source of heat. So definitely some of the moon, Enceladus, Europa, definitely Titan, potentially Triton as well. You know, so I think the prospects of life, and it would be crude, it would be, you know, rudimentary forms of life. I think we are literally, I think the next decade, if not the next 5 years, I won't be surprised that we actually find signs. And I would love us to find signs on Mars with Perseus rover. You know, I mean, it would be historical, but you know, I think if you drill down deep enough into Mars, I wouldn't be surprised if they find bacteria and microbes can survive incredibly harsh conditions. We know that now from Earth, the extremophiles, etc. So if it can start, that's the key. If it can get started, it usually finds a way of surviving. So, you know, it could be that there is actually a lot more out there. And when we discover it, it'll be, I was going to say earth-shattering, but, you know,
Mars-shattering.
Mars-shattering, but it really will. I mean, it'll suddenly put us in our own place and say, well, actually, life can, if it can happen more than once in one solar system, then it is definitely widespread in the rest of the universe.
Ah, cool. I've just had a message from somebody saying about your model story.
Yes, that's Gary, isn't it?
Time for that, Dave. It's coming on my message.
We'll have to make it quick because I was hoping to get back to Simon. But yeah, Paul model story, Marks and Spencer's.
Right, okay. This was down to.
We may have to end on this one.
we literally had the girls would do some of the modelling of the clothes, and the men wouldn't do anything. And then one day I got bullied into doing it, sort of thing. So I had to do the modelling, and in that particular case, sort of thing, it was one of the shocks where you suddenly discover that a bit like acting, you change in the same room. You know, down to your underwear, of course, but that was still embarrassing for me. So it was quite an experience. But the other thing was that I was known to haunt the lingerie section. And not for all the reasons you think.
Father Ted.
I used to, well, yeah, fun enough. A lot of people refer to that now. But I did it before then. But the point was sort of thing, I had to check the tills to make sure nobody was being naughty and filching money. Didn't happen. But I found the place where I could hide the best was in the laundry section, peeping over the bras, etc. Until eventually people started telling me, Paul, it's pretty obvious, a bloke in the laundry section.
It wasn't a case of, Paul, the shop shut at 5 o'clock. It's now 6 o'clock. Time to move.
So on that moment, on that bombshell.
Okay, we've only got a couple of minutes left and I'm rushing through now. So I'm going to quickly pass to Simon, who may have a question. It may be about mushrooms on Mars. I don't know.
Oh, definitely not mushrooms on Mars. No. I love your reviews. So I've got one of them here. But I'm also a lover of Google reviews, and I love a 1 and read why someone giving it a 1 or something like that. But the reviews in the magazine, they're always 4s, 4.5s, 5s. There's nothing ever lower. I never see anything lower. So where's all the bad kit?
Well, why review bad kit? I mean, we've got a reputation to uphold. You've got to bear in mind, I have to be very careful what I say in terms of reviews of the Sky at Night because of the BBC connection. But no, the simple fact is that we always want to review the best for everybody, and that's the aim of the reviews, is to find the best products. So what's the point of? We haven't got room to review. If we could review everything, if the whole magazine could be all equipment, then you'd have the bad reviews as well. And there is stuff out there. And to be fair, we have at the odd time turned down stuff or literally sent it back and said, we're not reviewing, this is rubbish. So if it doesn't appear in the magazine, that's a clue. Well, that's the best I can say. But, you know, I mean, we've got limited space. You know, there is a real limit to, especially the printed version. So there is a real limit to what you can actually feature. So we're going to feature the best that we can find. You know, so that's as it happens. They end up with, we have done 3.5 stars and 3 stars. You know, so you have to search hard for them. But there are. I've got a big master spreadsheet which tells me all the reviews, and I can tell you all the scores. So there have been 3-star reviews, but 3 stars technically means good. So we have to make sure the suppliers understand. It does mean good, doesn't mean it's fantastic. But on that point, I better shut up.
Okay,
I will lose my job.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul, for joining us on Reach Out and Touch Space tonight. A round of applause from the panel, please.
Yeah. Hey.
And we'll be...
We just say we've got Mark Chalmers in the background there as well.
Yeah, hi, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
And we'll be coming back here on Thursday, of course, with Reach Out and Touch Space. Hey. And we have got Joe Middleton from the Herschel Museum here on Thursday night, ready for your questions. And thanks to Simon for organising that one. So thanks, Paul, again, for joining us on Reach Out and Touch Space. And we're going to leave tonight with a track. What else would I play at the end of a show with Paul Money but Pink Floyd and Money?
Oh, of course.